So we have the Chase back in 2026 across all three NASCAR series. How it's going to work. The top 16 drivers in the regular season point standings qualify. It is fully points based. There are no wild cards like we used in the late 2010s, where it was your top 10 in points and then the two guys with the most wins, or any of this sort of win and in stuff that we had before. It is gone. It is the top 16 drivers in the regular season standings qualify for the Chase for the Cup over the final 10 races. That stays the same as the playoffs and Chase, etc. And it is the reset at 10 races to go. The most points scored over those final 10 races will win the title. The big thing, though, winning in is gone, but wins are now worth a significantly higher amount of points. They were 40 points. Second place was 35. Third was 34, and on down the line. Wins are now worth 55 points. So even though the win and in is gone, Seth, wins still mean a good bit to getting yourself in position of qualifying for the Chase.
They definitely do, Elliot. I will say how this affects, I think, the futures market, though, when just looking at holistically. Like, yes, if you have a guy like Shane Van Gisbergen who's getting a couple 55-pointers a year, right, where you're out there and just winning these races, that's great. That's fine. But someone like an Austin Dillon, who can go out and win Richmond every single year, I don't know if he still has as great of a shot to make the playoffs in this format. I would say he wouldn't. So it is rewarding the top drivers. It is great for that, but it definitely does, I think, put a little bit of a pinch hold on the betting market. I don't think we'll be seeing any 300-1 Cole Custer long shots anytime soon, my friend.
No, it definitely eliminates those long shots, but guys who can pull off multiple wins a year, it still was helpful. If you retrofitted the 2026 Chase format to the 2025 season, the number 16 seed still would have been Shane Van Gisbergen. He still would have squeaked in to the Chase format as the very last seed. He would have got in by only 2 points over Ty Gibbs. The other changes that you would have had, Josh Berry and Austin Dillon both would have been out. Their points were not good enough. Busher and Priest, the two Roush cars that came ever so close, they would have been in. Kyle Larson still would have been the champ. So overall, it may not change a whole lot about what happens, but you're right. The long shots, you're not going to see so many Hail Mary winning in types, but if you're able to put together consistent wins, consistent results, it will give you a good chance to make that Chase. We talk about Xfinity to O'Reilly with that change. I feel like we've been calling it playoffs for so long. If we misspeak, it's the Chase this year, not referred to as the playoffs. Playoff points, the things that you would get if you would win a stage, win a race, when you got the reset into the final 10. Playoff points don't exist anymore. What does still exist are stage points. So the maximum amount of points that a driver can get in a race now, anything but the Coke 600, if you win the race, lead the most laps, get the fastest lap, get all the stage points. I don't even know if there's lead the most laps points anymore. But your maximum points for a race would be 76, 86 points for the Coke 600 with that extra stage. So still the opportunity to rack up a lot of points with wins. And if you are good enough to get that first seed, you will start with 2,100 points and a 25-point cushion over the second place driver. Goes all the way down to 2,000 points for that final seed. So first gets 2,100. Then you have 2,075, 65, 60, 55, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, and straight at 2,000. So you get a little bit of a boost if you're the top seed there. And then it's the same as it always would be. The better you do in the regular season, the better you're set up in the playoffs here. And it really, we look at it last year, only 2 of the guys will be switched out. You're still going to see a lot of that same consistency really help out guys. And you lose the gimmicky parts of it, which I know a lot of the old school fans really enjoy.
No, and it totally makes sense, and it rewards those types of drivers like your Alex Bowmans, like your Chris Buschers, like your Bubba Wallaces, who, if you're playing in any type of fantasy league, like our Fan Tracks league over there, Elliot, where you get awarded for stage points, Bubba Wallace was a rocket last year. He was one of the best drivers to have week in and week out because he was getting so many stage points and because he was having consistent finishes. So this, at least, while it does eliminate those Austin Dillons, the Cole Custers of the world, the drivers who likely are not going to be consistent enough, even with a win, to get into the playoffs, it does keep the door open for those drivers who've been on the cut line religiously, right? The Ryan Preeces, we talked about the other group, the Ty Gibbs, those types of ones who are going to be right there in the thick of it. And I think it, better or worse, I think it's going to give us a really nice product. I'm excited for it. It gives us something to talk about and discuss. I never hated the Chase when the Chase was around. I was a kid then, so I don't have strong opinions at that time in my life of it. But still, I am very happy. It just definitely does change the way I think we have to approach it. Is there any other way you see from a betting standpoint that it maybe affects whether that's future markets or whether that's just, hey, maybe there is less of a shot for long shot wins just because these drivers aren't going to be going as hard because it's not a win and get in. Hey, I got to dump Joey Logano to get into the playoffs type of thing.
Yeah, it changes things from that standpoint that you're not going to see guys go as crazy as Austin Dillon at Richmond in 2024. Dump 2 guys to get the win there. But it will reward that consistency, and it does make things harder on, of course, your long shots, your 300-to-1s, they're out.
Yeah.
But even some of those fringe title guys, like you go back to Joey Logano in 2024, winning the championship, even though he didn't have the most consistent year and was just good at certain times in the playoffs. If you're a lower seed, you have a steep hill to climb. You look at from the 1 to the 16. The 1 starts 100 points. Even if you get the max points, that is 2 races in a row you have to win from the 16 to even get to that 2100. And then that's not even factoring in what the 1 seed is able to do. It could very well be right at your tail. Your Joey Logano's, I don't remember exactly his 2024 run off the top of my head, but you're not going to be able to go ahead and win this race at the right time or win that race at the right time, run like crap in the others, and then get to that one and done championship race.
Yeah.
You got to be consistent over the 10 races, and you still do have to win races, though. Steve Letarte, a guy in NASCAR media, a former crew chief, of course, Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., a guy who's lived and breathed this before. 2007 season, Jeff Gordon in the Chase had an average finish of 5th, but he didn't win enough races. Jimmy Johnson won more races in that 10-race chase, was able to take home what was then the 2nd of his 5 titles in a row. So winning is important. Consistency, probably more important, and something that for the people who say, well, you need legitimate champions, I feel like this gives you a legitimate champion, at least makes it much more likely in the previous playoff system.
I think even for those drivers, to your point, like Joey Logano, even, I was entertaining rolling out and hitting SVG for 100-to-1 on the championship future, just because when we got to the playoffs, I knew if I placed that at FanDuel, I'd have a cash out waiting for me. That's off the table now, right? Like that's off the table because SVG can maybe get himself to the playoffs, but it's not like he's going to have this scenario where he can kind of leapfrog his way into the next round repeatedly by winning road courses, right? That's not going to fly in this new type of era. So I think it definitely is going to shake that up as well. And, we've seen how many times, whether it was Joey Logano in the past, Denny Hamlin this year, where you win that first race. And then honestly, you have 2 more races where a lot of times it's kind of best to fade that driver, right? In a week-to-week basis, because they're not necessarily going to go hard. They could test different things. We've heard Steve Phelps say that in this press conference earlier this week as well, Elliot, where he doesn't want these drivers to coast. He wants them to have to be consistent week in and week out. So I think for the top 10 market, something like that, it makes that a bit more interesting. I think for head-to-heads, it's going to tighten things up towards the end of the year because, let's face it, towards the end of the year, outside of a couple long shot top 10s, we're pretty much betting most weeks the same 5 or so drivers. And then it's like when Denny locked himself into Phoenix, it's like, well, I'm not betting Denny till Phoenix, so it kind of, cuts the field down even a little bit more on that point.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I will clarify in the press conference, it was Steve O'Donnell. Steve Phelps, the former commissioner of NASCAR, resigned his post over the last couple of weeks. It's all good. It's the 2 different Steves. I just wanted to clarify. One of them has resigned, and the other one, Steve O'Donnell, going to be sticking around. And having him spearhead that press conference shows that they're not going to make wholesale leadership changes at NASCAR if we go back, dipping back into the NASCAR court. Steve Phelps out, Steve O'Donnell going to keep his job, it seems like. And hey, you talk about how you're going to manage things at the end of the year. If you're a bettor on the O'Reilly Series, formerly Xfinity, or the Truck Series, it's important to note those 2 series will be using this same system. Back when the Chase was in the Cup Series, late 2000s, early 2010s, those series were still running full season points. That is not going to be the case. They are going to run the Chase format as well. On the O'Reilly side, 12 drivers will get in. It will be a 9-race playoff there. It'll be the same point spread. First, we'll get that 2,100. 12th will get that 2,020 points. They won't have the same 100-point spread. It'll be based on the number of drivers in the field. Same with the trucks, 7 races, 10 driver playoff there, or 10 driver chase there, 2,100 for first place, 2,030 for 10th place. It happened a little less often because your dominant driver is going to be dominant. They're not going to take their foot off the gas quite in the same way I feel like as on the Cup side, but Those you can't lock into the championship round. You can't lock yourself in too early. You're going to have to keep that consistency throughout those shorter playoffs, even with lesser drivers as well.
Well, and the question I think this opens up, Elliot, is are you more inclined to ride favorite futures into the season? Because you know me, I'm always looking for value. Oh, this one book has this guy at 40-1. This other book is offering this at 50-1. They're the only book. I'm taking the 50-1. That's value right there, right? And I've been so like kind of discredited a little bit of like, hey, I want to ride a Kyle Larson championship ticket at 6-1 for 9 months. Like, I'm usually not that type of guy, but now I think with this type of strategy in play, it definitely opens up the door to that. And it also, before too, a lot of our handicapping, like our handicapping for the Jesse Love future that we are both on last year into the playoffs was, hey, Jesse Love sets up really well for these various stages at different points. Like he's probably gonna have enough points he can get past the first round, but that third round, he can get into the championship because he's good at Talladega, because he's good at some of these other tracks. Now that doesn't matter as much. Now it's like, are you good at these 10 tracks? Right. So it's now you're looking at things a little more holistically. So I think that also changes our standpoint from a futures betting market as well.
And it's really tough to even handicap those because in the 10 or 9 or 7 races, depending on what series you're betting, you have pretty much all the track types in there.
Yeah.
So you can't even say this guy's good at this track and not this track because it's all fairly even in there. Talladega is still late in the year. You still have the Roval for all 3 series, I believe. You've got your short tracks, you've got your intermediates. It's going to be harder to handicap. But to answer your original question, in terms of riding the favorites, it'll, I'm just as likely to, because at the end of the day, you could have those kind of wild card guys make it deep in the playoffs, but in terms of who was going to actually win the title, it was kind of always the same 6 guys anyway. And that makes this all the more likely here with the full 10 race chase coming back. And down the line too, it makes it almost easier to bet some of those favorites.
That's a good point.
If you look at a Larson or a Hamlin or someone like that,
yep,
we were definitely thinking, oh, they've over the full season, they're one of the best. Over the full playoff, they're one of the best. When you get to Phoenix, it's all Penske. So I'm more willing to bet a Penske driver to win the title than I would have been to bet those other guys. Now, not having that singular race, it can be easier to bet some of these favorites if you anticipate them keeping that hot streak into the chase and not slowing down, which could make a Byron who's a little slow in the summer a little tougher to bet, and could make Hamlin and Larson were 2 guys that turned it up this past year in particular in the playoffs, so they could be just as likely to do so in the chase.
Yeah, it definitely takes out, like, you were always betting that championship ticket knowing, hey, that is eventually going to turn into let's just throw Kyle Larson out there, a 5-1 race winning ticket. Like he has to pretty much win or at least beat those other drivers. It's coming down to 1 race. And it's like, is that like a lot of value to ride for 8 to 9 months? I don't think it is. But now, like if Kyle Larson's on a heater and he wins the regular season and he goes into the postseason, and he also continues to dominate, that 6-1 feels pretty good, right? Like you kind of get some of the thrill out of it. Like we were shaking in our boots, screaming at the top of our lungs when Jesse Love cashes that 11-1 ticket for us. Like that was awesome. So it's going to take some of that away. But at the same time, you're not going to get boned like if you were a Denny Hamlin ticket holder last year for, multiple times throughout the season. He started a little bit slow. I know people kind of jumped on him early at some good numbers, 10-1 at some books. And they got absolutely, screwed over at the end. So great to hear that as well. Elliot, I did want to address this question from our guy, Charles, who's back in the chat for the first time in a while as well. Chuck, hope you're doing great. Thanks for tuning into the program. Asking, can we give our take on caution at stage breaks with the new postseason system? How do you think that affects things, Elliot?
So not much changes on the surface with it. Again, when you have the stage wins, you would previously have your 10 stage points if you want to stage, as well as the 1 playoff point. Playoff points don't exist anymore because the playoffs don't exist anymore, but you'll still look at it as the stage points. And I don't think it'll really change the strategy. It's going to be great, obviously, to have those bonus points coming in, but guys are going to look at that mostly the same as they did in the past, I believe. Even, I'm starting to think of it even in the chase, because you would see guys early in the playoffs, especially in the first round, they'd be much more willing to take stage points than give up points at the end of the race. And yeah, that's really interesting to think about. I hadn't thought about that since this has been announced yet. If the same sort of strategies would go out to really sell out for stage points, I would imagine they would, because now, before you would do that kind of for seeding or to advance in a round, the more points you can get, the more important they'll be, needing to be in that top 16 to qualify for the chase and not, giving up on stage points, hoping you win Daytona in the summer and being able to get in and kind of not really worrying about what you did in the first 26.
I'll say this, when it comes to those road courses late in the season in the playoffs, it now starts to open back up the stage 1 and the stage 2 winner market for us, right? Because in the past, we really couldn't have bet those, especially late in the season, because you know that all the playoff drivers are going to stay out and try to collect those stage points. And you know that anyone out of the playoffs, SVG, Michael McDowell, those guys are going to short pit, right? They're going to try to get out ahead of this. But now, I mean, that still might be the case if those guys aren't in it. But now it's a 10 race chase. Everyone's kind of jockeying for position. Those points are also going to come back to dollar bills, right? You know, every team wants their driver to stay out a little bit more, collect those stage points, because now it's like, hey, I don't just have to win this race to advance, right? Like we got 10 races, we got 10 shots at this thing. So I think it will actually cause a little bit less chaos there in the postseason in some of those races with deciding when to pit or not. I think you'll get some less strategic maneuvers from teams that desperately are trying to get a win. So I think that's overall a good thing as well there.
Yeah, I agree. All in all, I think this is the great compromise here. At the press conference, like you said, they had, current drivers Ryan Blaney, Chase Briscoe were there, the legends Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Mark Martin there as well. Those are two guys who had kind of argued for the full season points. Of course, Mark Martin much more vocally than Dale Jr. and much more forcefully, but two guys that really put themselves out there for tradition. Blaney and Briscoe, guys who have both made championship fours and in Blaney's case, won titles in the previous format. Yeah. I feel like this is the great compromise. Wins still mean a lot. You get a boatload more points for winning races. You still have that playoffs type feel with the chase, that reset there to really narrow down, okay, these are the guys that can win it. You really got to be clutch at the end of the season and still have that feel of now's really crunch time. That creates the excitement for the more casual fans, for us too, and as well for new viewers in the broadcast networks.
Yep, it is a win all the way around. I'm very excited for this. I will miss the playoff format. There were some really special moments that we got because of that. Who can forget some of the win and get-ins that we saw, like Chase Briscoe on SHR's last stand, right? And the Christopher Bell and the Tyler Reddick moments. And, Blaney has to win at Martinsville. He has to catch Eric Almirola. These types of moments might fade away, but it is going to make it a more legit champion. It is going to make it a more legit championship ticket that you're on as a bettor as well. So very happy. And just like the lawsuit, man, everyone has to take and give in this world, right? You have to come to a compromise. And I think the entire sanctioning body, as well as the drivers, the crew chiefs, the team owners, more specifically, who were in on this decision, deserve a great pat on the back. Very happy with it overall. Elliot, would love to hear everyone's comments down below as well. Let us know. Are you guys a fan of the chase? Are you glad it's back? Did you like the playoff format? Are you going to miss the playoff format? Do you still want full season points? Is that possible? Let us know all that down below in the comments, please.
Something I should mention too, the chase over its history had some really exciting moments too. Its first year in 2004, I think heading into the final race at Homestead, I believe there were 5 guys who could win the championship. So that's more than your championship four would have given you. Even though it doesn't happen every year, you still can have some guys who you weren't really expecting to be title favorites really turn it on. You think back to Tony Stewart in 2011, not a guy who was running super great, was able to make it into the chase, won 5 of the 10 races, ties Carl Edwards for on the points at the very end, but because he had more wins than Edwards, is able to take home the championship there. So even though there aren't I don't want to use the word manufactured, because everyone says, oh, you're manufacturing the Game 7 moments, but you still are going to have some exciting moments. Even just the fact of, like I mentioned, 2007, Jimmy and Jeff, the 2 Hendrick cars really battling. You're going to see some exciting moments. You're going to see things stay close. And in all likelihood, you are still going to see more than one guy have a realistic shot at the title each year at Homestead or wherever they end up doing the final race, if there's still plans to rotate it.